Amazing. Thank you so much for your help. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Well, yeah? You can hear me? Cool. My name is Keen O'Brien, and I created a class with Latitude Chicago this last March that was called Exploring Grief, Death, and Trauma. And in my own practice, so I'm an artist and an educator and a community organizer. I do work around abolition and police abolition and prison abolition, and I'm chronically ill and I'm disabled, and a lot of my work is about the intersections of those things. And so I proposed a class to Latitude, and Latitude is a photographic space here in Chicago that has a community digital workspace and also has an open education program that is online and can be taken from anywhere in the country. And there's like workshops, and this group was a reading group, and out of it came a body of work. And some of the work had already been made, but was recontextualized by the class, or some of the work was being made during the class. And we continued the class on for like a second iteration after, and about 5 students stayed on, and the five of us our work is up on the 4th floor, and today I'm going to be in conversation here with Angelina about her work and my work and sort of the ways in which they intersect, and thinking about, hold on one second. This is not the first slide. This is the first slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about, these were the texts that we read. I think it's important to contextualize sort of like what we were doing in the class. So the book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay, and The Body Keeps Scores are both books about trauma and grief and loss, and they are not specific to art making at all. And so we started the class off thinking about just giving ourselves like a language to talk about grief and a language to talk about trauma and the ways that it is in our bodies and it's held in our bodies. Because I think, as artists, we are makers, and those things live in us, and that comes out of us while we're making. And I wanted us to have kind of, a platform for that. And then we went into reading the book, Photo, Trace, and Trauma by Margaret Iverson, which is a wonderful book about the history of photography and the ways in which that lends to trauma in the way that we can trace trauma through imagery, which is something we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to hand it over to Angelina to introduce herself.
you're doing these paintings, but there's still a photographic element to them, and speak about how trace is involved in your work.
Yeah, sure. Um, so I'm just going to name this that I have. It's very hard for me to hear sound, and also, so I'm having sort of an auditory meltdown a little bit. So just bear with me here. Uh, I'm realizing I'm like I can't hear two things from different directions at the same time. Okay, so I just wanted to name that. Thank you for talking about your work, and we'll go back into her work a little bit more. This is a project that this is the first time this work has ever been shown. It's I'm it's in process. I have about 40 more paintings to make, and currently I have about, these are the ones that I have currently done. So I created these. These are based upon photographs that I made while I've been hospitalized since 2012. I've been hospitalized over 60 times since 2012 with my chronic illnesses. And while I'm in the hospital, I just use my camera as a way to like engage with my own, what I'm processing and what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. But I don't remember anything that happens while I'm in the hospital. So my therapist calls it a whiteout, where like the trauma just completely creates a tunnel of not, like I have like amnesia basically. So I think I believe that I'm experiencing reality and I know what's happening, but when I leave there, I have no cognitive memory of anything. So as I look through my photographs, that pieces together my memory of my time in the hospital. So like my friends and my loved ones will come see me and I don't remember that, and until I look through the images, which is always a very deeply emotional, sort of traumatizing experience, to be honest, because it's very weird to know that I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and I don't actually remember anything that happened while I was there. And then like little pieces of memory start coming, sort of like any kind of traumatic event that we experience, right? How like pieces of memory will just kind of like come back to us. And so I started this past year. I've had a really amazing year where haven't been hospitalized. This month marks the first year in 15 years that I haven't been hospitalized. So I've been able to have a breath and look at this work and decide like what am I going to do with this work, and what kind of art am I going to show it? What are these photographs? And I'm a photographer, trained photographer. And so I've never really done painting before. But as I was looking through these images, I was like, these are not great photographs, like technically, right? They're on my iPhone, they're low light. I printed them, they look kind of terrible printed. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna do anything with these because they just didn't hold up. And I had the idea of turning them into paint by numbers. So there's like a website where you can just like send your images and they send you, you can pick between 24, 36, and 60 colors, and you upload your photograph, and they send you a canvas that is like by number, and they send you all of those colors. And so I ordered one, and I did it. And as I was doing it, I realized that like the repetition of painting those detailed numbers over and over and over again, and then the image starting to appear, resembled to me the experience of working in the dark room, where like when you're working with a negative and it appears. And it also started to like, I was reconnecting to that memory in a very new way, that because I still don't remember it, but the image itself becomes the memory. And so I just kept ordering them and painting them, and deciding I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images, and deciding like which ones made the most sense. I feel like as I was painting them, I was realizing the perspective from my point of view was the images are sort of sad to me, and I think other people have told me they read differently, which is beautiful. I want them to however they read. But for me, there's like something so, like the repetitiveness of the space and the location. And as someone who's spent so much time in a hospital in my life, hospitals don't scare me. I love them. I feel safe there. Because I'm always like saved on some level, right? Like I go there and I leave better than I went in. And so I have like such a deep, this part is sad for me, but it's like a home feeling in hospitals where there's a kind of like presence there, and when I'm there, I just like can relax, and that is, a lot of that like lives in my body, and I can feel that as a trace. As we're coming back to that idea of trace, I think that the other thing about these is that I see these as images, not necessarily photographic images, but I see them as a form of image making. And I don't divorce them from photography, because I think that that is the root of what they are. I'm not a painter. I'm just using this as a tool to like create a different lens for these to be viewed. And in the class, I've been thinking about trace for a long time, and the way that trauma is traced on my body, specifically around like PTSD and complex PTSD from being hospitalized so much. And when I entered this class, I was really just excited to create a class where we all could be in conversation about different levels of grief. And it was amazing to me that instantly we all had a relationship to the way that trauma traced on us. Like, that became the word of the class, and it became sort of the focal point of everything that we were talking about, and sort of drived a lot of our conversation. And if you go up to the fourth floor and see the work, every single piece has something to do with tracing, through stitching, through working with other people's, Larry Wolf is working with his mother's drawings from when she was alive, and then he's like reworking them and making them. And there's just like, I think that there's just, I'm curious. I mean, I want to be in dialogue with you about this, around the idea of trace and the ways that it is in both in our works and in the exhibition at large.
I think with any analog process, there's the presence of trace, because it involves kind of like physically inscribing and physically contacting the object that you're working on.
Yeah.
And there's also, with photography, it's just analogous. It speaks to trace and trauma. Even the words that I'm trying to unlearn in photography, from capture to exposure, I'm trying to bring different words to the table, such as record and document.
Well, those are such colonial terms, right? Like capture and, yeah.
So it's really like the terms of photography are very dramatic and very and hard. With my work, because I work with analog photography process, you know, there's the trace of the silk residue, and it just builds up as this film on the sheet of photographic film. And then even with the processing, there's a trace of chemistry, which is creating the dark spots, which are the areas of the negative that have all the information and the mapping of what the experience is, or what we're trying to register about the world. And then the empty spots even create lines of tracing. And I see the empty spots
Yeah.
like the refresh of the work.
Yeah, I love all of that. Can you break down for a second for people the process of how you make it? Because I know we have this image, but if if you're not familiar with photography, all of this, even just you saying a 4x5 negative, I don't think means much of anything, right?
So here's today's 4x5 negative. Usually I work on a table because if I'm traveling here by plane to Chicago, my film is in a baggie, and that's my bar, something that I wash my hands.
So it's an unexposed 4x5 negative, right? Which is a 4x5 camera for those who are not photographers, or those cameras where you stand behind them and you put the hood over your head, right? And you create, yeah, okay. Just breaking it down.
So I take the sheet of film and I pretty much do the incorrect thing with it. I bring it out into light and I expose it to the light rather than keep it in the dark to make an imprint of an image that comes through the camera. And so I'm physically imprinting my hand washing onto the film by creating, so it kind of creates a resist. And so when it goes through the chemistry,
You put it through traditional black and white chemistry.
traditional black and white chemistry, but I go the wrong way.
Oh.
Most people would develop, stop, and fix. I go from fix, stop, develop, and then I go back and forth many times
Wow.
through the three chemistries. But then it slowly eats away at the soap and creates different tonalities and spaces on the negative.
Do you notice that, do the negative, like what's happening on the negatives chemically, does that change over time? Or is it fixed once you stop taking it through the chemicals?
It takes about 45 minutes to process one negative because the soap has been caked on for the whole day.
Sure.
That the chemistry kind of has to eat away at it to create little bits of information. But once it's finished, the soap comes finished to be eaten, then I fix it for the full amount of time and it becomes an archival record.
Got it. So it doesn't shift then. It's fixed. Okay.
But because I'm working through the chemistry back and forth, there's all sorts of trace of the process. This process is kind of called chemograms, where you're using the chemistry to affect the, it's kind of the chemistry is the soap residue to make it resist. Certain chemistries don't affect it at certain different times. And so you'll see traces of, like if you look at one of the close-ups, you'll see like staining, like purple colors, actual staining of fixture. And normally in black and white images, it would just be black and white, but you get different tones of brown, and sometimes I get green. And it just depends on how much soap is on it and how many times I wash my hands during that day.
Wow.
It just varies.
Yeah. That's beautiful. There's a quote that is from one of the readings we did that's photography as a medium is often associated with the psychic effects of trauma. The automaticity of the process, the wide open camera lens, and the light sensitivity of film all lend themselves to this association. I feel like you have talked about your work as being like mortal and like they're objects like that, and I feel like that connects to that quote. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think that when you're using long exposure, and I haven't found the right word to translate for exposure, but when you, I guess in historical photography, when they would do portraits of people, the photographic film wasn't as sensitive to light as you
Yeah, and I feel like I think about mortality and in my work too, whereas like making them into paintings, they become an object, um, they become a different object, and then in that, I feel like looking at them, all of them are sort of like contending with death, right? I mean, well, I think most people's association with hospitals is death. Like when I like ask people, like most people have like, oh, I like was there with my parent that died, or like something like that, or like and then unless you're chronically ill, and then you are there all the time, and it to me is actually like more about life than it is about death. But there's a mortality that's like present in these images. For me, yeah, I think that like when I look at them as paintings and they've become this object, a different kind of object than the digital image I started with, they hold a different kind of weight, which is really interesting. And it's like it's actually something, because I've never been a painter, and like there's always been this contentious thing between painting and photography, that like painting is more valuable than photography because photography can be like replicated and a photograph can be replicated over and over again, but a painting cannot. So it's really funny because I actually sort of like end up feeling that way about these. And so that I'm like this way that I have felt my whole life being a trained photographer. I'm like, wait, what? Because there's something about that there's only one of them. And I've never made work where there's only one. And you're making work that there is only one. Like you can't, sure, like we printed a digital print of that because installing those, and she traveled from Canada to be here and all these things didn't really make a lot of sense for us to do. But yeah, I think that when there's something about that there is only one of that record for each day, right? It becomes, also speaks to mortality in some way too. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I want to see, does anybody have any questions or be in conversation? No pressure, of course. I'm just wanting to open it up. Yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. Well, the first answer is I literally realized that painting is such a repetitive gestural movement that I was like getting carpal tunnel in my hand, and I was like having to go to the chiropractor to like adjust. I was like, my wrist feels like it's broken, and the way that I was sitting, I've had to like do so. Just literally, it's like affected my physical body because it's something that I'm not used to doing. So I'm still kind of figuring out how to make these like 40 more that I want to make, because each of them take me about 8 hours, and I am just obsessive like that, so I'll just do it for a whole day and like do nothing else for 8 hours, and then my body's like broken the next day. But I did, a lot has come up for me through making them. Yeah, I haven't talked about this work before, so I'm realizing there's no way to talk about it without being like deeply personal, which is fine. Yeah, so I do EMDR as a form of like trauma work, and so actually a lot of memories have been coming up through the making of these paintings that happen while I'm in the hospital, that are like very specific traumatic events that happen, and so then I write them down while I'm painting. I also have a terrible memory as a result of all of my medical trauma. So like I wouldn't remember it if I didn't write it down. So I like write it down, and then I take it to therapy and we do MDR about it. And often what's interesting is like the photograph, this one really specifically, the one where I'm about to go into the CT scan. I've probably been in 100 CT scans in my life, which is the top, the first one in on the top. right? But this photograph, while I was painting it, I realized was taken right before I had an anaphylactic reaction in the CT scan, which is one of like the top 3 most traumatic things that's happened to me. And it's interesting the ways that these paintings are like bringing up memory, but also making me realize like, wow, I was taking a photograph like 10 seconds before like my worst nightmare happened or something like that, right? And like this picture of my hands feels important because that IV was the first time I had a blood transfusion was, it wasn't happening right then, but that was the day that I had my first blood transfusion. And if I was just looking at the photographs, there's no way I would have ever remembered any of those things. But there is something about staring at it for 8 hours and then like having them on my wall that like brings up a different kind of memory to me. And I'm finding this to be an incredibly cathartic experience, actually. Like, it's very healing for me. Even when it brings up the hard things, I find, yeah, it's just like, I feel very grateful to have found a way to talk about illness. I've been very confused about how to do that for years as an artist. And also, like, really shied away from it, because I felt like I just want that to be separate. Like, I want to make art that's, like, more, I don't know, something else. And now I'm like, oh, wow, this is actually very helpful for me. And yeah, so thanks for asking that question.
I find that with trauma, you kind of get frozen, and you don't know how to move through it at the moment that it happens, right? But working through an art practice, it lets you kind of revisit that emotion in a different way and work through it and see it over and over again, make different pathways to handle and manage it. And then in the end, the art itself just helps you heal a little bit from it.
I mean, your work, when I saw Angelina's work, I was like, it like has affected me a lot, and I want to write about your work. I've told her that. I want to write about, OCD is like such a real thing in my life, and COVID has made it wild. And I feel like the ways that you're just like naming that, like you're just like, yes, I am having an obsessively compulsive relationship to washing my hands, and I'm going to like use this as a trace and a mark of that, I think is incredible. And I think it is like literally showing us, it sort of is showing us all the trauma. For me, it's like, it shows me the trauma, like it is a visual of, because it's every day, and I'm like, I lived through all of those days, and like I did that every day, or like I didn't leave my house for like, I mean, I'm still very quarantined compared to most people, and it's like, that work just shows that to me, like the isolation of that, each one of those things being a day of isolation and a day of repetitive compulsive fear and, all of that, yeah. Can you talk closer to your mic? Wow, 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 wow. That's amazing. Wow. Cool. Well, I think that the sound is like actually I have to stop. I'm like having a little bit of like a woe zone. But thank you all very much for coming, and please go check out our exhibition. And I just want to plug for Latitude. So Latitude, this open education platform, if you go to the Latitude Chicago website, these are online courses that are very affordable, very, very affordable. They're like $65 to take a 12-week course. And they're online, so you can take them remotely. And I encourage you to, if you want to propose classes to them, they are very open to that. And it's not just photo-specific courses. They can be open to all kinds of art medium. Thank you so much for coming.